I look like the crazy father, just like Richard Williams.
The night of the slap, Will Smith didn't just go after Chris Rock. Serena Williams was sitting right there in the crowd that night when Will blamed his violent outburst on her father. Will convinced her to trust him to play her dad in King Richard, but then he betrayed her and her family.
I was so mad.
Serena had to defend herself and her family her whole life, from the beginning of her career.
Crowd won't stop booing Serena even after she won the tournament.
To the end.
You owe me an apology.
Serena Williams absolutely melted down.
And now she's not going to let Will ruin everything she fought for.
I'm not afraid to stand up for myself.
Richard Williams was a fierce defender of his family. I'm being called on in my life to protect people. Art imitates life. I look like the crazy father, just like they said about Richard Williams.
Just like they said about Richard Williams? What did he do?
Well, Will was right about Richard defending his family, but it wasn't in the way that Will did.
Very confident.
I'm very confident.
You say it so easily. Why?
You got to understand that you're dealing with an image of a 14-year-old child. And this child gonna be out there playing when your old ass and me gonna be in the grave. When she says something, we done told you what's happening. Leave that alone.
How strong my dad was to be able to do that in the climate that we live in, and to not be afraid to stand up and protect his daughter.
Who was he protecting them from?
When Serena and Venus were first starting their careers, the fans and the media, they were really hostile towards them. When Serena was about 19 years old, she won a championship and she was actually booed off of the court. But her father set an example for her on how to defend your family.
My dad taught me winning is not important if it's done on the tennis court. He said you're a winner if you're a winner in life. You see these kids playing tennis, and then you see the parents yelling because these parents want success so much, not necessarily for the child, but a lot for them as well. And my dad never wanted us to feel that way.
So Serena was determined to set a good example for her own kid. When she gave birth to her daughter Olympia, this was supposed to be the most joyful time in her life.
I've always wanted to start a family. I've always envisioned myself as a mom. Am I gonna be a good mom? Am I gonna be a strict mom? Like, I don't really know. I guess it's the same attitude I have in tennis. I want to make sure that I'm the best.
But it quickly became a nightmare.
I told the nurse I can't breathe. I need a mask. My stitches broke. And I remember I was in the bathroom with my mom and I was just crying and crying. And it was just really hard.
I was terrified that she might die.
I'm like, listen, I have a pulmonary embolism in my lungs. I've had this before, I know my body.
I was grateful that she had the wherewithal to speak up because she knew her body better than any of us.
Serena spoke up for herself like her dad taught her to, and that's what saved her life. She went through not one, but 4 surgeries, and she couldn't get out of bed for 6 weeks. To make things worse, Serena dropped from first place in the world in tennis to 451st. She was trying to set an example for her daughter, but it was easier said than done.
Are you enjoying motherhood?
I feel like I'm really, really excelling at it. In other aspects, I'm like a fish out of water. I don't know what to do. I don't know why this is happening. Why is she crying?
A year after Olympia was born, Serena fought her way back to the US Open final. And when an umpire made what she felt was an unfair call, she had to stand up for herself.
Code violation, coaching, warning, Mrs. Williams.
And I understand why you may have thought that was coaching, but I'm telling you it's not. I don't cheat to win. I'd rather lose. I'm just letting you know.
She kept her composure, while standing up for herself, which is not easy to do, so it's very classy of her.
Yeah, but it didn't stop there.
Serena will need a new frame.
I don't cheat. I didn't get coaching. How can you say that? You owe me an apology. Gee, I have never cheated in my life. I have a daughter and I stand what's right for her and I've never cheated. And you owe me an apology. You stole a point from me. You're a thief too.
It's understandable in the heat of the moment, like her, like she's a fierce competitor, so like your emotions are, running really high. But calling the umpire a thief, it's just like a little bit petty.
Regardless of what you think about how Serena handled the situation or how she reacted, the media scrutiny was relentless.
Serena Williams absolutely melted down and turned that final in the aftermath into an absolute disgrace.
I look at the way that we teach our children to be mindful of their own emotions and control themselves. We would have encouraged them to let that go and move on to the next point.
And then the backlash turned a lot uglier.
There were accusations of sexism, and with the publication of this cartoon, a worldwide debate about racism.
She shouldn't have talked to the umpire in an aggressive way, let's just say, or in a tone that's not respectful. But with that being said, a lot of athletes do it on a daily basis, and they don't get judged in the same way that Serena got judged.
A few months after the backlash from the US Open, while everybody was hounding Serena about what had happened, there was somebody who actually wanted to celebrate her and her family. Remember that interview where Richard stood up to protect Venus? It turns out that it didn't just inspire Serena.
That image burned in my heart because that's how I wanted my daughter to look when I showed up. And that interview had really changed my parenting at that time. It was like the look on Venus's face, it was like she had a lion, and she was so confident and so comfortable that her lion wasn't gonna let anything happen to her. I fell in love with Richard Williams.
A biopic starring Will Smith as Richard Williams has been announced.
This is an honor to have Will be here and play this role for us.
This movie was a gift to you and your family, so I am ecstatic that you appreciate it.
King Richard was a box office hit, and Will won an Oscar for Best Actor. That night will go down in Oscar history, but not for the right reasons.
Will Smith takes a swing at Chris Rock on stage at the Oscars.
I'll say this, Will Smith can't take a joke. Chris Rock can take a punch.
Will was immature. I think he was childish, and I think he was violent.
Will and Jada's son, 23-year-old Jaden, tweeted out this message. And that's how we do it. Serena Williams was left stunned, just like the rest of us.
Richard Williams released a statement saying, "We don't condone anyone hitting anyone else unless it's self-defense."
Serena stopped at maybe verbal abuse, and Will didn't. He didn't stop with words. He just took it too far. The bad action that he took that night had an immediate impact on his son, but it's the wrong message.
A few months after the slap, Serena decided she was ready to move on from tennis. It was going to be part of sports history, and unlike Will, she rose to the moment.
Serena, this has been your stage. This is your moment. What would you like to say to your family, your friends, and all the millions of fans that are watching you around the world?
I'm just so grateful to every single person that's ever said go Serena in their life.
Serena started a business to empower people the way that her dad had empowered her. She was stepping up for her daughter in the biggest way possible.
So for me, it's really important to hold women up. I want to be able to be a good leader and a good example for them.
Well, we can't live in this world and be weak. And if you're a woman or if you're a woman of color, you really need to be strong and you really need to stand up.
I realized a lot of people of color and a lot of women are just not getting funded. That's something I also want to teach my daughter. I want to teach her that it's okay to make the first move. Instead of waiting for things to come to you, it's important to take that opportunity.